Most people who go into the Appalachian wilderness are afraid of what they cannot explain. Bears, snakes, getting lost, the dark. These three accounts are not about any of those things. They are about people, real people, living in those mountains in ways that should not be possible. And the moment each narrator understood that whoever was watching them from the trees was not lost and was not afraid. I do not spook easily in the outdoors. I am 38 years old. I've been hiking solo since my mid-20s, and I've had exactly 2 encounters in all those years that made me genuinely change my behavior on the trail. This is one of them. May 2022. Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina. 4-day solo trip, off-trail sections, terrain I knew reasonably well from 2 previous visits. I had been out since early morning, and by mid-afternoon, I was deep in a section of forest that does not see much foot traffic. That is exactly the kind of section I prefer. I had stopped to filter water from a small creek when I became aware that I was being watched. Not a sound, not movement, just the awareness. The specific kind that arrives before your brain has any evidence to give it. I kept filtering water, and I let my eyes move without turning my head. There was a man standing in the trees approximately 40 meters uphill from me. He was not hiding. He was simply standing between 2 trees watching me filter water. He was wearing dark clothing, not hiking gear, not technical fabric. Dark clothing that had the look of something worn for a very long time. His hair was long and unkempt. He was barefoot. Barefoot in Pisgah in May, on rocky terrain that would make most people with boots careful about where they stepped. I kept my movement slow and finished filtering my water. I capped the bottle and put it in my pack. Then I stood up and looked directly at him. He did not move. He did not look away. He held eye contact with the specific stillness of someone who has been watching people move through this forest for long enough that he is no longer concerned about being seen. I said hello. He did not respond. I asked if he was all right. He tilted his head slightly. The way you tilt your head when someone says something in a language you understand but have not heard in a while. Then he looked past me, down the trail I had come from, and back at me. I understood that he was asking where I had come from, or he was checking whether I was alone. Either interpretation made me want to move. I told him I was heading out and started walking. Not fast. The deliberate normal pace of someone finishing their water stop and continuing their hike. I heard him follow for about 20 minutes. Not close, not aggressive. Just present. The specific sound of someone who knows this terrain moving through it without effort while I was working to stay on my line. At a trail junction, I took the fork that led toward the trailhead. The following sound stopped at the junction. I did not look back. When I got back to my car, I sat in it for a while before starting the engine. I thought about the barefoot detail for a long time. Pisgah is not terrain. You walk barefoot by accident. It is terrain you walk barefoot because you have been doing it long enough that your feet have adapted to it. That man had been in those mountains long enough for his feet to change. Barefoot. Dark clothing worn long past its purpose. Eye contact without flinching. Following at distance for 20 minutes, then stopping at a junction. He knew exactly where that trail went. Tell me where in the world you are watching from right now. Drop it in the comments. I read and reply to every single one. We are pushing toward 100,000 subscribers before the end of this year. If these accounts mean something to you, hit subscribe. Every single one counts. Does the fact that he stopped exactly at the junction tell you he knew the trail system well enough to know which fork led out? Or does someone who makes eye contact without flinching tell you he was not concerned about being reported? Drop your answer below. I want to be clear before I start that I have hiked alone many times, and I am comfortable with the discomforts of solo backcountry travel. I am 29 years old. I have been doing this for 6 years. What I found in the Monongahela in August last year was not something I was prepared for, and I have thought about it almost every day since. I was 4 days into a 5-day trip. The 4th day is always when I am most comfortable. I have settled into the rhythm of the forest. I am moving well. I am not thinking about the outside world. It is the best day of any trip. I came off a ridge into a hollow and smelled wood smoke. Not a camper's fire. Not the clean smoke of dry wood burning. The dense, accumulated smell of a fire that has been burning in the same place for a very long time. The smell that gets into timber and soil and stays there. I slowed down. The camp was built into the hillside in a hollow where it would be invisible from the ridge above and from the hollow floor unless you were coming from the specific angle I happened to be coming from. It had clearly been there for years. Structures, not tents, actual structures, made from timber, tarp, and found materials. A fire pit ringed with stones that had been blackened by hundreds of fires. A cache of containers and equipment that suggested long-term habitation. Garden rows. Someone had planted a garden in this hollow. I stopped at the edge of what I could see, and I did not go closer. There was nobody visible, no movement, but the fire in the pit was burning. Not recently lit, settled. The kind of fire you build when you're not going anywhere. I stood there for probably 2 minutes taking in what I was looking at. A person or people had been living in this hollow in the Monongahela for long enough to build structures, establish a fire site, and grow food. Off any map, off any trail, in terrain that most hikers would not enter. Then a woman stepped out of one of the structures. She was older, I would estimate mid-50s to early 60s. Though the condition she was living in made it difficult to judge. She was wearing layered clothing that had been repaired many times. She looked at me with the same absence of surprise that the man in the other account had. Not startled, not alarmed. As if people occasionally came through this hollow and she had learned to simply wait and see what they did. We looked at each other for a moment. She said one word, "Go." Not threatening. Not loud. The specific tone of someone who says one word because they have found over time that one word is all they ever need to say. He went. I have thought many times about what I would have done differently. The honest answer is nothing. She was not in distress. The camp was established. Whatever she was doing in that hollow, she had chosen to do it, and had been doing it long enough to be very good at it. What I cannot stop thinking about is the garden. Someone planted rows in a hollow in the Monongahela National Forest and has been tending them long enough for the soil to look worked. That is not a temporary arrangement. That is a life. What do you think she was doing in that hollow? Choosing to live that way, or living that way because she had no other option? And does one word being enough tell you she has sent people away from that camp before? Drop it below. The third account tonight comes from 2 male friends who were camping in the Nantahala when they woke in the early hours to find a man standing at the edge of their campsite in the dark. He was not approaching. He was not retreating. He was simply standing there watching them sleep. That is the third account tonight. My friend Brennan and I had been doing annual camping trips together since we were in our early 20s. We are both in our mid-30s now. This was our 7th or 8th trip together, and the first time either of us has experienced anything that made us consider not going back. Nantahala National Forest in June. 3 nights, good weather. We had found a campsite off the marked trail on the second day. Flat ground near water, the kind of spot that felt like a discovery. We made camp, made food, had a fire. Normal. We went to sleep around 10. I woke up at some point well after midnight. I am a light sleeper in the backcountry. Any sound that does not belong wakes me. What woke me was not a sound. It was the specific stillness that follows one. I lay still and listened. Brennan was asleep beside me. The fire had burned down. Then I saw the shape at the edge of the campsite. A man, standing at the tree line, maybe 15 meters from where we were sleeping. He was facing the camp. He was not moving. He was wearing dark clothing, and he was simply standing there in the specific posture of someone who has been standing there for a while and intends to keep standing there. I did not wake Brennan immediately. I lay still and I watched the shape and I thought through my options, which were limited because we were in sleeping bags, and whatever was going to happen had the advantage of being already upright and already outside. The shape did not move for what I estimate was 4 or 5 minutes. Then Brennan shifted in his sleep, the specific sound of someone about to wake up, and the shape moved. Not toward us, backward, 3 or 4 steps back into the tree line and then gone. Brennan woke up about 30 seconds later. He asked me what time it was. I told him to be quiet and listen. We listened for a long time. The forest was completely normal. No retreating footsteps. No movement in the tree line. I told Brennan what I had seen. He was quiet for a moment and then he said something that I have thought about many times since. He said, "How long do you think he was standing there before you woke up?" I did not have an answer for that. I still do not. We broke camp at first light and hiked out. We did not discuss whether to stay. We packed while it was still getting light, and we left. The walkout was quiet. Neither of us had much to say. We have talked about it since. The detail Brennan keeps coming back to, and it is the detail I cannot put down either, is the backward steps. Not turning and walking away. 3 or 4 steps backward into the tree line while facing the camp, like someone who did not want to turn their back on what they were watching. A man at the tree line. 4 or 5 minutes of watching. Then 3 steps backward into the trees facing the camp when Brennan moved, not turning his back on them. Subscribe to Obscure Nights right now. Does someone who steps backward into the trees, not turning away, tell you he was being cautious about the people he was watching? Or does it tell you he had done this before and knew exactly how to leave without being followed? Drop your answer below. 3 accounts. 3 encounters with people living in or moving through Appalachian wilderness in ways that most people never see. This is important context. People living off-grid in national forest and wilderness areas is more common than most hikers realize. Law enforcement and Forest Service agencies document encampments in backcountry sections regularly. Some of these are people in crisis. Some are people who have chosen voluntary isolation. Some have been living this way for years and have no interest in contact with the outside world. The encounters in tonight's accounts were not dangerous in the way most people imagine danger in the backcountry. None of the narrators were harmed. In each case, the person they encountered communicated clearly through behavior, watching, speaking one word, stepping back, that they wanted to be left alone. That is the most important thing to understand if you encounter someone like this in the backcountry. They are not necessarily a threat, but they are operating by a different set of rules than you are, in terrain they know far better than you do. The correct response is the one all 3 narrators used. Acknowledge if necessary. Do not approach. Do not escalate. Move toward your exit at a pace that does not communicate fear. If someone is in genuine distress, injured, disoriented, asking for help, that is different. Contact Forest Service or call 911 when you have signal. But a man standing barefoot in terrain he clearly knows, or a woman who says one word, or a figure that steps backward into trees, those people are not lost. They know exactly where they are. Respect that, and keep moving. To the man who sat in his car before starting the engine after coming out of Pisgah. To the woman who thought about the garden for days after leaving that hollow, and to Brennan and his friend who packed camp in the dark without needing to discuss it. Thank you for trusting Obscure Nights with these accounts. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Links in the channel bio. This is Obscure Nights, where the cases nobody talks about get told the way they actually happened. Good night.